So where did you find yourself in the parable? You know, we have to remember that when the written word is proclaimed in the sacred liturgy, it brings us to those events. So right now, Jesus himself is speaking to us this parable. So where do we find ourselves? Was there any figure in there that resonated with us or stirred our heart? Maybe it was the priest or the Levite. Maybe it was the man, the victim, who was robbed and beaten. The Good Samaritan. Maybe the innkeeper. Or maybe we just blanked out during the reading of that. I know it happens to me too sometimes. But maybe while I'm talking about these figures, one of them may stir your heart a little bit. I just say pay attention to that. May the Lord's saying something there. And you know, when we hear this parable, the church fathers interpret it in a certain way. Find this all through the early church, is that the human race is that man, that it was jumped and was stripped and beaten, left for half dead. You see in that what our enemy has done to us when we first sinned. Right? This parable goes right into the center of the gospel proclamation of the kerygma. That to see in this is that we have been attacked, we have been harmed, and we have been left for dead, and it's rather hopeless. And the church fathers then see that the Good Samaritan is actually Jesus, right? Who has compassion on the sight, who bends down and through the power of his cross, through his precious blood, pours himself into the wounds and rescues us and cares for us. And then the innkeeper is seen as the Holy Spirit active in the church, where we are restored and given new life. So in that, when we hear this parable, we should first of all see ourselves as that man. You and I, right? We have been attacked and we've been robbed and stripped and beaten through sin and the hopelessness of our situation, needing Jesus Christ to come and save us. And then Jesus says, at the end of this parable, he says, go and do likewise. Meaning that he wants us to imitate him as the Good Samaritan. He wants us to become like the Good Samaritan. In other words, not to remain in indifference. Right? The priest and the Levite saw the man and passed by the other side. Not my problem. The Lord says, indifference, that is not what it means to be in Christ. That we see and that we have compassion. It also doesn't mean judgment. Nowhere do we see the Good Samaritan as like, oh gosh, this guy, he made some pretty bad choices and that's how he ended up. It's not indifference or judgment of the one in need, but being moved with compassion and helping him in his need. And this points to a real one of our core teaching as the church. It's called the principle of solidarity. Those of us who are alive in the 1980s may remember that from Lech Walesa and the Polish resistance to the communist regime. That was the solidarity group that did this. And what solidarity means is that when I see someone else, I recognize their human dignity, that they are made in the image and likeness of God, and so call forth from me this oneness, that we are in this life together, and that your need and your hurt is my responsibility. And so the solidarity is recognizing that dignity, being in this, that we are all in this together. And you think about that, we should do this with those who are in need, maybe those we are repulsed by, maybe those we disagree with, maybe those who are living lives contrary to the gospel. Right? We are not to cancel them and to ignore them, to villainize them. Right? We're to be moved with compassion, to bring them to Christ. We all live in the Portland area, right? We have this massive homeless problem, right? We see this need all over our city. So what is our reaction to someone on the corner? We're not too far from 82nd, and where I shop usually is Winco, right? That's a great place to shop. In fact, I've run into some of you there as you're doing your shopping. But to see the person at the corner there as you're coming out of Winco is asking for money. Now maybe I don't give that person money because they probably won't use it in the right way. But do I recognize their human dignity? Do I make eye contact with them? Do I do what Mother Teresa says is the first proclamation of the gospel? It's this: the smile. Do I wish them a good day? Right? And Mother Teresa said over and over again, the biggest poverty in the world is the spiritual poverty. And what people hunger for is love. And we know those who live on the streets have very hard time. And the lack of love that is there. So do we extend that solidarity to those who we see in need? Even people that we might not be attracted to or maybe even repulsed by their appearance. And I had a moment in my life where the Lord, I don't know, it was a conversion or a deepening or something in my life. It was I was 24 years old and a seminarian, and I'd spent one of my summers in Albania as a missionary working with Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity. The Missionaries of Charity, they go to the places where no one else will go. They take care of the people no one else will take care of. Sometimes they don't even know the language of the people, but they begin with their smile and their charity, right? And so in Albania, this was in 1994, just after the fall of the communist regime there, and just reminded me, like, if anyone ever thinks that Marxism is a good idea, you should go to those places to see the destruction and the misery and the death that those regimes bring. Well, the Missionaries of Charity had opened this home for basically an orphanage. And in countries like that, there's no support, especially for those children with special needs. And so there's many children with special needs there. Well, this one time, we had taken the kids out for a picnic, myself and another seminarian and the sisters. We had a lovely time, and they were singing and whatnot. And this one little girl, she's about probably 6 years old, special needs, and she just she ran towards me, and she was just really excited about being out and having a good time, and she wanted to give me a hug. And I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and up in I think 26 is where we're at. And so I just naturally kind of scooped the girl up and let her give me a hug, and she wraps her arms around my neck really tight to give me a hug. And then I feel on the back of my neck this like warm liquid. and I realized that she had sores all over her arms. And it was the pus from the sores that was just getting all over my neck. And there was that moment of, that's really gross, right? But the Lord was so good to me in that moment. He said that was past in a split second, and he just flooded my heart with love for this little girl. And this whisper in my heart is like, don't worry about it, right? Love her, And that was kind of a pivotal moment in my own life about how I was going to be, right? As this is the Lord asking us to enter into this parable, right, and to be transformed by Him. And so, so what do we do for those who are less fortunate? Right? Maybe we don't give them money directly, but are we generous in the many organizations that do help them? Right? Do we recognize their human dignity? Do we give them love, which is what they need the most? We could help here, even in our own parish with our St. Vincent de Paul, every Saturday morning, our St. Vincent de Paul people give food to those who are in need, right? Or maybe to volunteer some time with that. And that's also too along with solidarity, is that we work with the structures in our society to help that. Right? We don't have to have this problem, right? And through our voting and through our work to make sure our elected officials are dealing with this problem, right? Because on the streets it's bad. Not only the drugs, but also the sexual exploitation that happens. Right? There's the misery of people who are on the streets. Right? And I think a lot of it is based upon this false notion of freedom, that people should be able to do whatever they want, regardless of the consequences. Well, that leads to a lot of misery. And so and it's not just a government problem, but it's usually the government working with charitable organizations, which has always made our country strong, right, to deal with this issue. But it begins by our own interior transformation that Jesus is inviting us into and becoming the Good Samaritan. So not indifference, not judgment, moved with compassion. Who's really good at this is actually our Monsignor O'Connor. He's the rector of the cathedral downtown. You've been downtown lately? I'm not sure if you've been downtown lately. Every morning they have to go clean up everything that happened during the night. It's not pretty. But you know what? For all the regular homeless people around the cathedral, he knows all their names. Right? Even the guy who thinks he's the Prince of Namibia. But that's where it begins, in that solidarity, right? That we are in this together. And in that, with the Good Samaritan, we shouldn't forget the very quiet figure in the parable. The one who's passed over a lot. The innkeeper. Right? Where would the Good Samaritan be without the innkeeper? And I myself too would kind of brush past that, always focusing on the Good Samaritan, but it was St. John Paul II who commented on this in one of his last books. He said, notice the innkeeper. What is he doing? He's just living his life, his ordinary life as an innkeeper. And he is integral to the great work of charity that the Good Samaritan does. Right? And who knows for how many days, weeks, months, whatever it might be, of caring for this man until he comes back to health. And we should pay attention to that too, because it's not as if we have to do something super extraordinary. Just the ordinary life that we're living. We're going to find people who are in need. And then there's the invitation to act with solidarity, to be moved with compassion, to recognize their human dignity, and to help. Because we are all that man. All of us have been that man. And that we've been rescued by Jesus and cared for and healed. And then he says, go and do likewise. And he is with us here in the sacrifice of this Mass to give us his body and blood, all the strength that we need to overcome our own weaknesses and to love in that way. Today, Jesus calls us out of indifference and judgment and to offer compassion to those in need, and so to build his kingdom.